Welcome back to KSP Interstellar Quests, a series in which we pay tribute to Scott Manley's epic series. And we are on our way to go interstellar, but it will be a long way until we get there. Last episode we did a couple of impressive landings on the Moon, but this time we'll stay closer to home. You're looking at our second cruise shuttle, the shuttle called Alon. And so the first one was a mix of cargo and basically trying out the proposition, but this one is carrying a big crew. And on board are a number of Kerbals. We have, of course, Bill Coburn, our main resident engineers. We have Brooke Kerman, Taemin Kerman, who just returned from their Moon episode, Theoli, and Catfried. Most of them are scientists, a couple of them are engineers, and we're going to need a whole crew for our epic mission. But first we launch in a thunderstorm. And I think it was Apollo 12 that launched in a thunderstorm and actually got struck by lightning a couple of times. So maybe not perfect, but doable. They're launching on a Vulcan Heavy. Payload is approximately the same about mass as we had with the other shuttle, the L'Esprit. But this one is carrying a different payload. Of course, we could swap out the payload and reuse the same shuttle, but in my mind, having multiple shuttles and slightly upgrading them over time makes sense. Just like the US had a fleet of shuttles, you probably had a couple of them. You can see that this has maximized the crew quarters, but before we dock, we need our engineer to get outside. I forgot the name of the engineer that was on the station. It's not Bill yet. Is it Milred, something like that. Because the docking port was misaligned. We saw this last episode and that really bugged me out. So I thought, let's see if I can figure out how to place it properly. And if you're in free IVA mode and you want to place it, you can press the C key on your keyboards to, much like you would do in the VAB. And it would have this alignment, not in free place mode, but really stick to the docking node. You can also keep Alt pressed and it will lock onto that. And then you can use the Q and the E key to rotate the docking port around, or any other part around. If you keep the Shift key pressed, it will go in increments of 5. If you don't use the Shift key, it's 6 degrees, like 15 degrees. But that allowed me to move the docking port around, and this should allow us to dock the shuttle in exactly the way that I wanted to. At least that's what I thought that would happen. But this is tricky stuff. This is tricky stuff to get right. And apparently, let's say it was tricky stuff to get right for me. And so our resident engineer has to go out again. And unfortunately, we have ladders close to the docking node. And I highly recommend that. I should have done that in many places, but here we are. And you can see me once again going through the engineering manual, picking up the docking port, locking it in place, but now rotating it with the little latch upwards. This should be it. This should allow us to move the shuttle around and dock it properly. At least if the shuttle would be kind enough to push back a little bit and align its docking node more properly, which it will do in a second. I fiddled around with it. There we go. Second attempt. And maybe our engineer needs a bit of distance. He's inspecting or giving radio guidance to guide the craft in. And making sure that everything gets connected properly. You can see the nice letter 2 on the side of the shuttle. Here we are. We have completed the dock. And I kind of like this crystal lab, like the Skyforge, our first little space station, to use as a docking extender for future episodes. Because we're going to expand the station. You're looking at the second launch of the Atlas rocket. This is sped up like 4 times. So I can show you a bit more of the launch sequence, which is quite noisy, by the way. We are launching the Leonardo and the Michelangelo module. And the Leonardo module has both a logistic module as a greenhouse in there, though we're not really playing with this life-keeping mods. But I really like the aesthetics of it. So we're building up a greenhouse, and we're also building up a logistics module, which will allow us to store more equipment and stuff we kind of bring over there. And to me, that makes total sense. I think the ISS is 60% storage space. And if you ask the astronauts, they say, well, if there's anything you would change, it's give me more storage space. Yeah, this is the rendezvous burn. We need to burn a little bit more to, or the insertion burn, I don't remember, to bring this massive module close to our Kerbal space station, Skylab 1. I'm not sure if we're going to retain everything of that station over time if all the new components are up, but here we are. I also like to clean up all the debris and a bit of old habits from RSSRO. I've stuck control ports on everything, so unfortunately also on this. Yeah. Our engineer needs to move over this time. We have Bill Kerman taking a look at the docking port and deciding, well, maybe I should swap that around. And then figuring out that it wasn't that. It was actually, what was the name of the tweak scale that fooled me. Because if you don't press the control key when you're trying to attach these kind of parts in the VAB, they will scale to the parent part. And now we have too many parts, so our engineer starts destroying stuff because there is a spare docking port there. Now we just need to get that all the way over to the other station, which is more difficult than it looks like. It's basically floating in the right direction and hoping you can get within 10 meters, because then you can attach it. But we made it. We are over. We removed the old docking ports and we're now putting up the new docking ports, making the old system compatible with the new system. Ideally, you would keep the crafts closer together rather than pushing yourself off in a general direction and then taking the docking port along with you. But regardless, we have docked both Michelangelo and Leonardo. Oh yeah, I haven't explained. Michelangelo is the workshop module. And though it doesn't seem to work exactly as I expected it would, but we'll fix that at some point. We're using Sandcastle. We should be able to print our own rocket parts and our own rockets once the station is complete, which will require more modules. This is the second launch for the space station expansion. These are expensive launches. Like, these are 80,000, 100,000 funds per launch, which is a lot for our small space engine at the moment. But I need the wider fairing bait and the control gimbaling of the rocket to push us through the lower stages of the atmosphere. Putting it on a smaller rocket would just make it flip over. And it's not like there's little mass. There's like 12, 16 tons of mass going up every time, well within the limits of this vehicle. But it's mainly the fairing size. But it's nice to have that wiggle room. The second launch for the space station is bringing up 2 additional modules. The first one is the Columbus lab, named after the European Space Station lab that was once flying on the space shuttle. And you can actually see a replica on it in Noordwijk at the Aztec facilities, where they have a full-scale replica, which is super cool. It's also the place where the first Dutch astronaut went up into. And I remember that when I was a kid, and I was glued to the television when Wubbo Ockels first went to space. We are getting close, and we're slowly docking these nodules together. First, we'll dock the Columbus laboratory, and we're bringing up quite a few modules up there. So we'll have a briefing room, which will allow the astronauts to have cool discussions with each other about what we're going to do. We have a galley, we have a gym, we have a stateroom, like a very luxurious quarters, which are the light part you're just looking at right now. And we also bring up additional solar power. It's tough to dock because this mass container you see on top is filled with ore that we're going to need for the workshop. And I really struggled because I didn't put enough RCS thrusters on there, and I didn't put enough RCS fuel on there. And once I realized that, at some point I decided, well, if we cannot get the module to the station, then maybe the station can come to the module. So by the time I started to run out of fuel, I put her in a stable situation and aligned them with the space station, and then basically gently pushed the space station towards the module, which is much easier. Basically because it got a ton of RCS thrusters, and it also got a ton of RCS in reserve. And we only need a small push once you're stable. But John's off-centric mark makes it really hard. And we're docked, and we're getting there. It's starting to look very impressive. We've aligned the solar panels. We got plenty of power now. And Catfred decides she's going to give us a tour of the station. This is her in the old laboratory module. And Soon she'll move down. She'll have a look at the orbit. Bill is up in the capsule checking the descent parameters. And down in the new space station, we are in what looks like the laboratory module. And from there you can open the hatch. You can see this is supposed to be the workshop. I think I'm having some issue with the IVA, but well, maybe that's something a reboot can fix. I'm pretty sure there should be in the IVA for that. And all the hatches interconnect with free IVA. You have to be careful which parts you lock together. And I actually wrote a couple of patches for the older modules. But here we can see her flying around to the laboratory module where some of the astronauts are doing some research. This is the briefing room. They're having their coffee. I'm not sure if a percolator would work in space. Probably, because you would force the coffee down through the liquid. Yeah, haven't really considered that. The galley, somebody left some sandwiches out, and someone's working out in the gym. And down to the final part. This is the stateroom with the bed and the chair and the toilets, so a lot of privacy, and she's going to sleep as the station floats around. Not a lot of room for astronauts, and on the ISS most astronauts just float around, hang themselves somewhere to a wall when they sleep, but we're going to do better. We're sending up the final module of KSS Phase 2, which is the Mikasa module. And Mikasa is, well, for those of you who speak Spanish, or maybe just have heard of the phrase, Mikasa is, of course, my house, or in reference to a place where you are welcome. It's bringing up a habitat module and a sickbay module and an additional power module, but it's doing this on a Vulcane Heavy. And I already mentioned, like, this is prone to flipping over, but because this stuff is light, we're able actually to fix this, but only in one way, by going straight up. And only when we are about 60-70 kilometers up, that's where we can start doing our gravity turn, which is the most inefficient trajectory I've done in a very long time in KSP. Like, normally you do a gravity turn to avoid losing all that precious energy, but if you have enough delta V and you have a flippy rocket, this might be one way you want to do it. Solar panels are being tested on the module, and as we bring her close to the station, we detach and we bring her in. On the top you can also see the workshop module that will allow you to build vessels. At least I think it's going to be able to allow me to build vessels. I've not really worked with it. I actually wanted to flip that one around and dock it to a different part of the station, but the fairing didn't really want to attach, and I think there's virtual endpoints connected to this arm that you just can't see, which is why the fairing doesn't really want to work around it. So we'll do it like this, and if it's in my way, I will use Bill or one of the other engineers to move it around. Easy dock. Station Phase 2 is complete. 3 docking hubs, multiple solar panels, and here we are. Sickbay module and a habitat module. Lots of place to do, and if we're able to build nice craft with the station, then Phase 1 space station should be complete, which is kind of cool. We are deorbiting our garbage. The upper stage is still there, and well, Command decides to deorbit it and misses the new build station by, well, a couple of meters, enough clearance. And Bill and Miralong was the name of the engineer. They are returning home, leaving a crew of 4 on the space station, 1 pilot, I think a pilot, an engineer, and a couple of scientists to perform their experiments, their long duration stay, and everything there is to learn about space. And the engineers probably will have a field day once the laboratories in the workshop are up and running, because they're going to experiment with building crafts in space from raw materials. But Bill is going to do other stuff. He is needed back on Kerbin because there's another mission planned to upgrade something else that we launched in a couple of earlier episodes. So we managed to upgrade our space station. Maybe it is time to upgrade our space telescope. I've unlocked some really cool stuff for that really wasn't available back then, and it's proven to be a real science generator. So let's see what we can do over there. Unfortunately, it is in a very high circular orbit. So I don't know. I have to do some calculations. But you can see that in the next episode.